Calling the 7 p.m. regular City Council meeting to order on August 6, 2013. Would you all join me for the flag salute, please?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call.
Mayor Middleton.
Here.
Council President Henderson.
Here.
Councilor Folsom.
Here.
Councilor Butterfield.
Here.
Councilor Langer.
Here.
Councilor Grant.
Here.
Councilor Clark.
Here.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is the consent calendar.
I'll move consent. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The next, we're going to do presentations. And the first thing we're going to do tonight is the recognition of Sherwood High School students' academic achievement. These are students that have all received 4.0 averages this year, or last year. And I really want to thank the superintendent of the schools came here tonight too, and I think that's really great so you can recognize the students too. And we're going to move down to the front. We're going to call off the names, and there'll be about 100 names, but I highly doubt that many are here. So we will recognize the students who are here.
While the mayor and council are coming down, I had the pleasure of doing this last year, and I'm always amazed at how wonderful our students do here. I will apologize like I did last year. I will probably mangle some last names, so if I get it wrong.
Superintendent want to join us? I'd love to. You bet. Come on up. Make room for this.
Okay.
Everybody knows who you are, right?
Okay, so we're going to start with Hannah Anderud. Anderud. Samantha Abel. Lucas Adams. Cosette Adamson.
We know him.
Thomas Adamson. Sean Allen. Mayor.
Are you Patrick's son? Oh, wow. Gosh, he's a lot taller.
Jonah Angus. Olivia Anthony. Bradley Bergstrom. Morgan Bowers. Matthew Brooks. Jacob Brooks. Hayden Brundage. Madison Budge. Anthony Berman. Esteban Calderon. Emily Carlson. Connor Carraher. Ryan Chidlaw. Ashley Christian. Anna Christensen. Megan Christensen. Kinsley Christensen. And yes, there's a fourth, Colin Christensen. Patricia Claus.
We didn't get any notice. You might hold this next time with a little notice.
Yeah, we're going to do one
That would
more.
be a professional courtesy.
Taylor Corno. Kellen Croston. Paige Cuthbertson. I warned you.
Fired over this.
Alan Dans. Taryn Denny. Jeffrey Dawes. Michael Deagle. Devin Donahue. Marissa Downing. Guinevere Duncan, Megan Durica, Jacob Eisenbeis, Molly Fettig, Gabriella Fisher, Ariel Flock, Emmett Floyd, Gage Fuller, Kylie Gersh, Riley Goff, Dana Grove, Gabriella Hall, Catherine Hall, Richard Hecker, Kimbra Hearn, April Highland, I'm probably not going to get this right, Tai Hong, Kristen Hodge, Bailey Holloway, Kyle Homer, Lauren Horner, Marie House, Hannah Huntington, Courtney Husk, Cortland Hutchinson, Jessica Embry, Mariah Jacobs, Hannah Jeans, Gabrielle Johnson, Annika Jordan, Hunter Keating, Bryce Keitcher, Malia Kirkland, Jessica Coster, Sarah Cotel, Cassandra Lauer, Marie Leslie, Caleb Lindgren, Chesney Mallory, Matthew Mann, Megan McCourt, Morgan McMasters, Daniel McNeely, Danielle Messerve, Camry Milne, Michaela Milne, Gabrielle Morey, Taylor Monroe, Lauren Nabdar, Josiah Ing, Lydia Ing, Tatiana, what do you think? Nagayan. Riley Nielsen, Amy Otis, Samantha Palladino, Andrew Peters, Keatley Peel, Alexis Reed, Jacob Reimer, Kathleen Resch, Peyton Reuter, Grant Richmond, Delaney Riggins, Rachel Robelli, Avery Rosenbaum, Anna Roth, Kelly Roth, Adley Rushman, Richard Schmidt, Allison Schwarm, Madeline Skipinski, Taylor Shannon, Brian Smith, Derek Snyder, Megan Starling, Talia Stashin, Kendall Swanson, Brian Swihart, Hal Tan, Kaylee Tapia, Hannah Turgison, Emma Vaincourt, Arunima Vijay, Griffin Weincheck, Tiffany Williams, Brianna Wyant, Benjamin Windheim, and Rebecca Young. That's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
And there's cookies and punch for them outside there too. So enjoy yourself. And this is probably one of the more important things we do on this council. And I really want to thank the superintendent. And we got awesome kids in this town. This is a tough time for the kids because it's vacation for a lot of them. I think we'll do it again another time.
August 20th.
August 20th, they'll be doing it again. And we want to read the names, even if they're not here, just to show how proud we are of all these students. 4-0, that is, I didn't get one of these ever. So, great job, just great job. The next, we're going to have a presentation, another presentation, and it's going to be Dave Troyer, and he has something he would like to relay on to our police department and the city.
I don't know if anybody was on 99 on Saturday about 3:45 in the afternoon when the intersections were closed down for a short period of time. I belong to an organization called Tribute to the Troops. What we do, most of us get on our motorcycles, some are in cars. We go visit families that have lost soldiers in the war. Give them a presentation of a nice plaque, read a little bio about their soldier, and then we spend about an hour with the family. We had 80 motorcycles and about 120 people. And every single person had an opportunity to go up and shake every single person in the family's hand. Very emotional, very moving time, especially for me because I lost a boy in 2005, so it's especially meaningful to me. And it's really easy to complain about stuff, but I want to take this opportunity after many conversations with Chief Groth, Captain Daniels, on the phone, in the office, back and forth. Sherwood Police Department really stepped up and helped us out on Saturday. They picked us up outside of town on Roy Rogers, brought us into town, closed off there at Borchers, got us on I-99, got us through town, because we like to stay together as a group, so when we get to where we're going, we can all get there at the same time. You know, we get there, we shut the motorcycles off, we get off, we don't talk, we try to be just as respectful as we can, just like we try to do when we're going through town to give a minimal impact. And by closing the intersections does make it quicker. It inconveniences a few people. We apologize for that, but it was a very good time. I want to basically thank Chief Growth, officers Chad Brinkman, George Lopez, Hector Rodriguez, Greg Hirsch, Sergeant Nathan Powell, as well as Captain Mark Daniels. Mark Daniels is the one that actually did the final planning on where to pick us up, get us through town, and it was a fantastic deal. So I want to be the first to say that I appreciate it. We had 18 people from out of town, out of state, that came out and rode with us, and they even complimented our police department for a job well done. So with that, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Dave. Dave, was there 6 families you visited?
We visited 6 families, 3 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. The 3 we did up here Saturday was in Beaverton, Cornelius, and then there was another family just off Shoals Ferry and Barrows Road that just lost their boy last August. And it's something that the mother, especially from the one last August, she's still, even with all the counseling with this and that, she still don't sleep at night. She goes to sleep about 5 in the morning, gets up at about 10 in the morning. It is difficult, so all I can say is, everybody here enjoys their freedoms, and if you ever, if you see a guy like me with a flag flying on my bike, don't give me the one. But it is something that, and what we do, the money that we raise on our rides goes into education fund for the soldiers' children. So, if anybody likes to ride motorcycle, Mayor Middleton, he joined us Sunday for a little while.
And he helped me pick my bike over because I dumped. Not the first time.
So, if anybody likes to ride, you don't know me, get a hold of Chief Growth. He's got the authority to give you my phone number if you want to, find out anything more about it. So, thank you for letting us come through Sherwood, because it's a great little town.
Ed Contreras was with us also, and he's the one that the stadium's named after. So it's unbelievable. We talked to a Marine's dad, and he said it's been about 4 years, and he doesn't wake up a day without thinking about his son. It's really touching. It is, and it was hot that day, but everybody but me stuck most of it out. So, but it's really touching. So. Thank you, Dave, for coming in. I really do appreciate it. Now we're going to go to new business, the special committee report.
Good evening, Mayor Middleton, Council President Henderson, and councilors.
Name and address.
Pardon?
Do you want to give your name?
Oh, yeah. My name is Mirta Meyer. Do I need to give my address as well? I can. No? Okay. In advance of appointing a special committee, you heard comments and testimony from the community related to ordinances establishing new business regulations, and solicited advice of citizens and business owners. As chairperson of the special committee, on behalf of all of us, thank you. Thank you and staff for outwardly acknowledging citizen involvement is needed to better define our community and its needs. As we've come together this evening and we continue to work toward defining our community, its needs, and the overall well-being of Sherwood, it is rather fitting that today marks the 30th anniversary of America's National Night Out Against Crime. This day is designed not only to increase awareness related to crime and drug prevention, but also to heighten and strengthen neighborhood and community spirit. So with that said, it's wonderful to see this room full this evening with members of our community. Because you received the special committee's report in advance, I will make every effort to be brief. Tom mentioned actually in our most recent meeting that the committee faced a large handicap, time. We had only 3 weeks to come together and work alongside city staff and legal counsel to put together quality products for your review and consideration. As we contemplated a number of different ideas, the basis upon which we focused our work was on the idea that a proactive, community-focused approach is necessary to preserve and promote livability, community well-being, citizen involvement, civic participation, public health, safety, and wellness, local character and prosperity, and environmental sustainability, all of which provide opportunities to thrive. Our work group came together from different personal and professional backgrounds and perspectives. We were successful in working collaboratively and respectfully. We examined sample policies from around the country in relation to several of the ideas brought forward to assure diligence in our considerations. I would like to point a few things to your direction. In page 2 of this special committee's report, item number 2, under dilapidated vehicles and other nuisances, this does remain an area of concern. And on behalf of the committee, we respectfully encourage you to encourage the police department in reviewing potentially and modifying the current nuisance code language. Also on page 3, item number 8, throughout our discussions, issues falling under Chapter 16 of the Sherwood Municipal Code were raised. Again, on behalf of the committee, we respectfully encourage you to promote and encourage staff and others to consider such things as a comprehensive review of the traffic study language and CAP language, consider modifying criteria in the review of new business or new development applications, guidelines related to overall development, new construction, to promote and encourage environmentally responsible building practices, and how to better foster economic development within the city of Sherwood. Also on page 3, the notion of a fair living wage for employees came up as a significant issue for the community as well as the committee. Included within this discussion, we looked at wages, benefits, and sick leave as a means upon which to further promote Sherwood as an economically and socially attractive place to live and work. There are both state and federal preemptions related to benefit and wage issues. Specifically related to sick leave, a majority of the committee agreed, due to timing alone, we could not complete the kind of community and business outreach necessary to produce a comprehensive quality ordinance. Many members on the committee felt this particular issue would be best addressed at the state level. The committee agrees, in an effort to better promote and produce living wage jobs within our city, the city of Sherwood does have ample opportunity to explore such things as small business development and promotion. On behalf of the special committee, tonight we present to you 3 ordinances for your favorable review and consideration. Number 1, the regulation of camping. Number 2, regulation of business hours. And number 3, a hazardous substance regulation. We look to you, our city council and staff, to enhance social, economic, and environmental factors aiming toward the sustainable well-being of Sherwood. Thank you for your willingness to invest in our community.
Thank you. We're now going to go to a public hearing on these ordinances. And what we're going to do is, since there are 3, we're going to go ahead and give 5 minutes rather than the 4 minutes to testify on this. All 3, you talk at all 3 at the same time. We're going to take them under one, and then we'll go individually on them as a council. Tom, do you want to, or Sylvia, do you want to?
Sylvia's going to read a public script.
Mayor and council, I'll
Just
read
a minute.
the public hearing script.
Okay, Myrta, thank you. I think the mayor,
She's still staying there.
but if people are going to come and testify, then
Oh,
she's
yeah.
going to step
Yeah.
down from the dais.
Right.
But
Did you want?
Yeah, Myrta's actually going to do kind of a staff report on each of the 3 ordinances, so she'll be.
Oh,
here for a little
first.
bit, yeah.
okay, sorry.
That's okay.
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing this evening to hear testimony on 3 items: regulation of camping, regulation of business hours, and hazardous substances regulations of. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said items. The order of business the council will follow in conducting this hearing will be to hear the staff report, receive public testimony, receive additional staff comments, and then questions from the council. The hearing will then be closed and no further testimony will be received. Discussion by the council will follow. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed to the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. As the mayor has stated, please limit your testimony to 5 minutes.
So real quick before Mirta actually does the reports on the individual ordinances, I just wanted to remind council and staff that if items are going to be referred to the voters, we're still on a very tight time frame. And so as you hear testimony and consider things, I just wanted to let you know in advance of testifying that by Monday, next Monday, August 12th, there would have to be ballot titles and explanatory statements for each of the items that would be referred to the voters completed, as well as a resolution for you to adopt something. And then if you have any changes to the proposed language, that would have to be done by that time as well. That would be in order to get the packet out so that people could review it for the August 20th meeting. The August 20th meeting will be your last opportunity to look at these and to make any potential changes and consider the ballot language, as well as pass a resolution regarding a ballot language, because Sylvia will have to notice it immediately thereafter in order for it to have ample time for any challenge period for the ballot title before it is due to the county. So September 5th is the absolute deadline, and in order to meet that deadline, we have a very tight time frame, just as the committee had a very tight time frame to put things together. So I just wanted to point that out to you and others as we move forward for consideration.
So if we move forward with drafting ballot titles and explanatory statements, there's a period of time in which there's a opportunity to contest, right?
So what the process would be is we would need to know tonight that those needed to be prepared and on which items you wanted those prepared. And by Monday, those titles would have to be done. They would be noticed, and then after you would adopt them on the 20th, and there would be a 7-day period for people to appeal those.
Thank you.
Mirta?
Okay, thanks, Mayor Middleton. So as I mentioned, there are 3 proposed ordinances here for your consideration. The first, the regulation of camping. This ordinance was drafted to protect and promote the health, safety, and welfare of residents and properties within the city of Sherwood. In regard to the regulation of business hours, the regulation of business hours is designed to preserve the quality of life during late night and early morning hours, discourage activities compromising public safety during late night and early morning hours, and to provide for efficient, effective, and economical provision of government resources. And as it relates to hazardous substance regulations, the release of hazardous substances into the environment may present imminent and substantial threats to public health, safety, and welfare. And again, the basis upon which all of these ordinances were drafted were to support the values and the mission of the city of Sherwood to promote livability and pride within our community. Thank you very much for your favorable consideration.
Mirta will be back to answer questions after the public testimony as the staff person.
But now I'm confused.
Okay. Did you cover all 3?
She just did one.
No, she just
you
did
need
camping.
To do all 3. She did all 3. I missed it last.
She touched on all 3. So
Wow.
she was quick.
She's been living it for weeks.
She'll be back to answer any questions you have after the public
you.
testimony period.
First person is Mr. Claus.
Robert James Claus, 2221 Southwest Pacific Highway. I think the enforcement of codes in this town is close to a legal racketeering deal like that. Code enforcement in this town is about as close to RICO racketeering as I've ever seen. You enforce it where you want to, when you want to. Here's your problem. Your city attorney, that's not really a city attorney, the contract attorney, according to Sylvia Stevens, that you represent the mayor, the city council, and, of course, the city manager. Now, there's no conflict of interest there as long as it's a contract. But there's conflict there if they start attempting to represent the citizens. Now, the problem is you keep writing these regulations. Your sign code is unenforceable on its face. Good God, you've even banned flagpoles. That takes a lightning piece of intelligence. Now, the problem is you're now proposing another code. You're going to enforce another document. Now, in the state of California, this kept happening over and over and over, and finally a group of people went to the legislature, and until they can prove they have 75% enforcement on the level of code, they can't pass another one. Fresno, for example, when we did a survey, had about a 35% enforcement, and they were going to write another code. In other words, you screw up once, so you go back and write a code again to prove you're doing something. Now, what you really ought to do, since we don't have a city attorney, is put a private attorney general provision in here, like in the endangered species. So we can go out and enforce your codes. Now, what you should then do is let the citizens connect the fees. Because your attorneys like to pick on people with breast cancer, we know that. So we've got all kinds of malice we'll eliminate. And then the thing you need to do is make it so it's profitable for us to go out and bounty hunt our fellow citizens. Because that's exactly what this town is coming to in your codes. You can't carry on a discussion with anybody here, or you're threatening them. That's raising your voice, I guess. Now, the next thing you need to do is you need to get a really clear definition of what you're regulating. Because your definitions in your code is almost as funny as Langer's smile. It's really humorous. It's just comical. You don't even know what you're regulating. You don't even know what an RV is. You're aware you don't have RV vehicles defined in your code. But that's all right. You should regulate camping. Now, what's that going to be? The Boy Scouts that saved you, Butterfield, having a bonfire? You don't even know what you're regulating. Your code doesn't regulate it, and you're writing another one. So this time, let's go back and say, anybody that stays overnight in Sherwood is camping. That's what you should do. Now, then you better go back and look at enforcement on this. Because for those of you that don't know, the Elks is Zone 5 residential detached houses to the acre. And they have an RV park. Now, is that camping? Is it parking? I don't know, but I'm going to tell you this, then you better spend a little time talking about your business hours. Because you've just got another mess to make you look like you're doing something when in fact you're just RICO racketeering again, so you can give zoning to those you like and punish those people you don't like. So put the private attorney general provision in. Make it worth us to go out and bounty hunt our citizens. That's a good way to do it, because that's what you turned the town into anyway, is a special enforcement district for those people that contribute to the right politicians or belong to the same arch group with them. Now, I think that's all pretty simple, and that shouldn't be too hard for you to do. You've got these people. Now, the other thing is they don't want to tell us they don't know how to do it. Go to League of Cities and Towns. They're mentioned specifically in a best practice manual. Adopt the best practice manual and say anybody who violates it is violating the ordinance. That'll throw your attorneys out of work, but that's a small point. You can clean this up if you will, but first thing you better do is go out and check what you're enforcing now. And if you don't think you can, now, I understand that in some cases, Jeff has to be stopped from doing his job and Bill Collins because he's stepping on the right political contributors. Let's get that out of it. And let's really become a good, tight, totalitarian town. Why write another code you don't have intention and you won't enforce unless you don't like the person?
Thank you, Jim. Susan Claus?
Susan Claus, 22211 Southwest Pacific Highway. My comments are typical of what my comments have been lately is process. And what we need to do, I'm echoing some of the comments that Jim said. When we put these ordinances together, we need to have the process in place to functionally be able to do what we're proposing to do. If not, it's just another methodology for the staff to have something on the books to arbitrarily enforce when they want, ignore when they also want to do that. And we, in this town right now, do not have a process for citizens to come forth and say, I've been either, or this process, this has been used arbitrarily in one circumstance, and in another circumstance it hasn't been applied. Why, and what do we do about it? We're an old enough town. We've been here over 100 years. It's the same thing. Like, why are we 15 years into the YMCA contract and just now the attorneys are talking about it? It doesn't make any sense. We need to have our paid staff be working on equal enforcement, equal treatment, and if we have something on the books or we're contemplating something on the books that we already know up front that we don't have the capacity to work with, we should know that up front. So we're not faking everyone out and thinking, hey, we got this now we know there's no camping, and then somebody tries to call and say, hey, there's people camping on this commercial parking lot, and then there's no process for that. Or the process is sometimes applied and it's sometimes not applied. Other than that, I mean, and part of the problem here is too the citizen outcry and the citizen reaction to recent events, and a lot of people who want to be part of the process. We're still at the point that some of the people that are in the process that may not be appreciated for being in the process feel like there's also a pushback on the staff level for trying to be in the process. And that's unfortunate because I've been to many city council meetings where either Jim or I or a few others, Gene Stewart, a few other people have been here, and the city council says, where is everybody? And then when everybody shows up, some people we like and some people we don't like. And that's communicated in such a way that the people are not embraced for coming out. They're disenfranchised, either by the fact that they feel uncomfortable or they feel that if they come out too far in front, they could be a target. And there's plenty of examples in town. I'm a perfect example in town of coming out front and being the victim of being targeted on very specific things, that there was no process, there was no other situation before mine or even after mine, where the city decided to take me to municipal court, and our contract attorneys ran with it. It's part of my overall objection that if we are, as a city, going to have contract attorneys who don't live in this town, who happen to also be running a lot of other little towns, and in some cases, running out, trying to experiment in small towns, trying to experiment with an ordinance, or trying to experiment with pushing a point to see if they can get further down the road for their legal practice, but using the forum of a small town like ours. We need a city attorney that lives in this town, that is devoted to this town, that belongs to this town. We've had 10 years with Barry Elsner and Hammond, and it's still a problem because we are still not reflecting the costs that we've been paying them, are still not reflecting in our budget under legal costs. In 2011, we paid them $225,000. And this budget cycle, we've only allotted 84,000. 60,000 was just allotted just for this special purpose. If we aren't being truthful in our budget documents, it is hard to keep going forward, and it's the same problem that Joe talked about with the YMCA. If you are not, in a very fundamental way, being transparent with the citizens' money, then how do you start the conversation? There's a cloud, and it needs to be removed. We need to have transparency. We need attorneys that work for this town, that aren't experimenting with this town, and that will not victimize citizens in this town for speaking up on very fundamental issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Neil Shannon?
Hello, Neil Shannon, 23997 Southwest Redfern Drive. I've had an opportunity to attend a few of the special committee meetings, clearly not all of them. There were so many of them. And I understand why the special committee was originally established, because of the concerns about the developments out in the Langer area and the merchants that were coming in. I think that this committee did serve as a lightning rod to assist the citizens in gathering together and understanding a bit more of what was going on. And I think they also realized that there was not an opportunity to create a poison pill, so to speak, for any particular merchant coming into town. I do not see an urgency that was perhaps created several months ago to pass these ordinances now, nor to take them to a ballot. If we go to a special committee and take these to a special election, it's going to cost the city of Sherwood a minimum of $5,000, possibly more. And I don't think that we need to spend that. I do appreciate the work that the committee has put together. I think they've done some excellent work. And I think these are ordinances that can perhaps be tabled, can be set aside, because right now I don't think we have a problem with many of the things that they're trying to address. I am not aware of any issues with camping or overnight parking that have been brought forward with the city. I am an RV owner. I am concerned that the overnight parking would be carried citywide. There are at times when people have, friends and neighbors come up and visit them, and sometimes they'll be, parked on the parking lot outside or parked on the street outside your house for a couple of days. They're going to plug in, they're going to visit their friends, and then they're going to continue down the street. This ordinance would prevent that from happening, so I'm concerned on that. Walmart clearly has a policy that individual store owners and store management are allowed to restrict overnight parking in their parking lots, and I think that it would be behoove us, if we're concerned about parking in that particular area, just go ask them. Ask them to post the signs, no overnight parking. Ask them to enforce the issues rather than us trying to enforce the issues. I'm also a little bit concerned with the trying to pass ordinances for prevention of 24-hour stores being open. Again, we don't know of any merchant in this town that is currently proposing to run a 24-hour store. I have no idea what might happen in the future. If it becomes a problem, then we could consider that ordinance, and it really wouldn't matter whether or not the store was already in place. I listened to some of Chief Groff's presentation before the special committee, and quite honestly, he indicated that there was no particular problems with late-night store operations. Quite honestly, he said that, if we wanted to regulate anything, regulate the bars at 2 o'clock in the morning rather than a merchant store. And a large store being open late at night could actually become an island of refuge if somebody had some real problems late at night. I don't know anything about the hazardous chemical or issues or storage and disposal, although I do think that we have plenty of EPA regulations that are covering most of what we're trying to do at this time. So quite honestly, I think that the ordinances should be tabled. I think they were useful to put together, great to get citizen feedback, but I don't think we need to have special elections and the added costs that are involved with those. Thank you.
Renee Browse. Renee Browse here.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Renee Browse, 22794 Southwest Highland Drive, Sherwood, Oregon. As with the three ordinances that we're talking about tonight, the one that I want to specifically address on behalf of the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce Board is dealing with the hazardous substances. The Sherwood Chamber of Commerce has failed to identify an existing problem that validates a need for regulation as it pertains to the considered hazardous substances regulation. The language of this ordinance increases the potential liability for residents and businesses of all scopes and sizes to pay additional fines associated with even household chemicals. Questions to consider. How does the ordinance impact residents as a final consumer? Are subcontractors responsible or businesses that hire subcontractors? How much do we gain by building another bureaucracy to duplicate or parallel what EPA, DEQ, Clean Water Services, and other government agencies are responsible for? There are many more questions to ask. The special committee did not contact current hazardous material incident controlling agencies before recommending this ordinance to council, nor did they have the time to look at current retail business practices locally for controlling hazardous materials issues. Despite the language that suggests that this regulation will only be applied in special circumstances, preparing for implementation puts additional costs on tight city budgets. What is the cost of staff time for developing this process, training, and addressing issues before removal action costs? Our concern is that we are trying to provide answers to questions that have not yet come up. Correlation does not imply causation. Thank you.
Eric Evans.
Good evening. I think I turned it off. Okay. Good evening, council, mayor, staff, and citizens. My name is Eric Evans. I also represent the Chamber of Commerce. I'm on the executive committee as a treasurer. The ordinance that I'd like to discuss is the regulation of camping ordinance being proposed. The mission of the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce is to give value to our members and the community through innovation, bold leadership, and programs that develop the business climate. The Chamber's philosophical view is that less regulation is good and that the marketplace should drive decisions and that the government's role is to foster economic development and job creation. The Chamber has concerns that the conversations of these potential ordinances based out of a reaction to current and future development have and will hurt Sherwood's ability to attract future development efforts. From businesses considering not renewing their leases to one local business pausing on a potential $30 million investment in our community, damage from this dialogue is already being done. As a chamber, we are proud that the local businesses in Sherwood overwhelmingly want to be good members of the community. If a problem were to arise, we have confidence that the business leadership in Sherwood would either voluntarily or if asked, take steps to correct the issue. Most retailers determine these policy decisions at the local level. Let's not spend taxpayers' money on a special election that simple communication can address when there's no current need. Our executive director held meetings with Sherwood's largest retailers. Most said that requests for overnight camping were minimal. One retailer stated that in the last 3 years, they have only had 4 requests for special permissions to use their lots at night. This lack of requests is assumed to be due to our distance from major corridors and the convenient accessibility to other overnight locations for camping, such as the Elks and Shampooey Park. Additionally, what we've found is that this ordinance could impact smaller businesses and residents in a more substantial way. If my mother-in-law wants to visit and she has more comfortable sleeping arrangements in her RV in my driveway, this regulation requires that we fill out a variance. If I want to set up a tent with my kids outside on the front lawn, I got to submit a variance. If there's an emergency with an RV that needs work done at a local auto shop and the repairs require an overnight stay, now there's responsibility to report it and unnecessarily use limited city resources to address the overnight stay. If a church, community event, or scout troop wants to hold an event on private property that has public access, now they have to call on city resources and fill out additional paperwork in order to do this. This costs the city and citizens money and doesn't address the purpose of this ordinance. The proposed camping ordinance purpose is to, and I quote, address adverse impacts of camping activities, quote, including littering, public urination, public defecation, public intoxication, theft of water and electricity. Currently, we do not know of examples of complaints regarding littering, public urination, public defecation, public intoxication, and so on at our local businesses caused by camping. If a problem were to arise, these types of issues can be addressed. We have faith in the Sherwood Police Department and under the leadership of Chief Groth and in the City Council to address these issues as they arise and protect the community that we love. But until then, the Chamber has not been able to identify an existing problem that validates a need for excessive regulation. The creation of these potential regulations has been a reaction to assumed future problems, which do not exist here in Sherwood, and adopting them for the ballot would be harmful, potentially expensive, and negatively impact businesses and Sherwood residents. Thank you for your time.
Leanna Knutson. And Leanna Knutson? Okay. Amanda Dalton?
Mayor Middleton, members of the council, Amanda Dalton. I'm here tonight representing the Northwest Grocery Association. We're comprised primarily of grocery retail suppliers and manufacturers in the Oregon, Idaho, and Washington area. We have 2 member stores in the city. They include Albertsons and Safeway. Walmart is not a member. I do want to say that we've reached out to other stores that are members, however, to gather input on this ordinance because we believe there's a regional impact potentially if you adopt specifically the business hour regulation ordinance before you tonight. While we oppose the ordinance in general and are concerned, similarly to what you've already heard tonight, in our retailers' ability to respond to growing consumer needs, growing communities, and your overall limiting of hours. As you know, our stores are currently not open past the 1 p.m. or the 1 a.m. time slot. However, our concern lies in the lack of clarity around the definitions of the ordinance in front of you. While it provides to limit times that we're open to the public, our concern is that it's also going to limit our delivery and receiving distribution lines. As you can imagine, that's going to impact not only your Sherwood grocery stores, but also your grocery stores down the line. It's going to put our trucks into your traffic, both in AM and PM congestion times. And obviously our stores around the area are very concerned that cities will adopt similar ordinances. I think it's a pretty easy fix. I understand that this committee has worked very hard and very quickly and that you are under a tight deadline. Perhaps we can draft a specific exemption that your intent is not to limit delivery. Right now, that delivery time, just so you know, a lot of stores it's 4 a.m. During the holidays, we're getting trucks as early as 3 a.m. And so our ask is just to make sure that that's specifically exempted from the ordinance before you tonight so that it's not going to limit trucks. Thank you.
Stephanie Sass.
Stephanie Sass, 97140. First, I would like to thank the City of Sherwood staff, Mayor Meyer, and the Citizen Special Committee for working hard in a very short time frame to draft 3 ordinances being presented to the council this evening. It is up to the residents of Sherwood to decide the outcome of these proposed ordinances, and I would like to see democracy work as it was designed, by letting the people decide. With vested interest in the current Walmart project and other future projects in Sherwood, I would ask that Council Member Langer recuse himself from this vote and future votes involving the use of his family's land, since I believe it's a conflict of interest. As a City Council member, you possess the ability to manipulate policies and influence others for possible personal gain. Even though that might not be your intention, it doesn't look good at any government level, especially to Washington County taxpayers in Sherwood that did not get a voice before the Walmart announcement. Thank you.
Michael Carlson.
Good evening, Michael Carlson, 23077 Southwest Main Street. I moved to this town when there was one blinking light, a hitching post in the shopping center, and I bought gas 200 feet away from here that's now a fruit stand. I've seen an awful lot of growth in almost 2.5 decades, and not all of it was really what I wanted to see happen. But it happened, and I just tried to find the positive in all of it. All in all, 2.5 decades later, Sherwood has turned out to be a great city. We saw tonight the school district, how great it is. We have a great fire department. We have a police department that is extraordinary. Now, the reason that we're here tonight stems from anger, personal agendas, collective pot stirring, and many other emotions and personal goals. I attended most of the committee meetings, and I am convinced that the goal was not to preserve our great city, but to have a negative impact on Walmart. None of these ordinances will hurt a billion-dollar company, but are already having a negative effect on our great city. I don't disagree with everything being proposed, but I think it was done too hurriedly and with too much personal emotion. I would suggest that council take their time before reacting. You've heard feedback from some of the residents, and even if 1,800 of the email and petition signatures that we've heard about are legitimate, you still have not heard from 90% of our city. I would suggest that you mail out a survey, let it run for a few months, do it so that I can sit at home in my chair, not be limited to 4 or tonight 5 minutes of testimony, but that I can sit down and I can give you my true likes and my true dislikes and my true feelings. In listening the night that our police chief spoke, I didn't hear of any critical situations that needed right now or in the immediate future that needed us to take any drastic measures. I know that right now and for quite a while, the police department has been very short-staffed, and I know that we need more officers. The city is growing as it has for the 2.5 decades I've been here, and it's going to continue to grow. And I think that our focus needs to be on more important issues than regulating our citizens. Thank you.
Amanda Bates.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, staff,
and citizens. I'm Amanda Bates. I am the Secretary and Executive Committee Board Member of the Sherwood Chamber of Commerce, a nonprofit 501c6 organization serving 250 businesses and organizations here in Sherwood. I am also a Sherwood resident. As with the camping ordinance, we have failed to identify an existing problem that validates the need for regulations in Sherwood. I'm speaking specifically of the regulation of business hours. Current 24-hour businesses in Sherwood are available because consumer demands afford it. Sorry, I'm getting a little nervous. According to Chief Growth in your June 3rd work session, 24-hour businesses are not hotbeds for crime. In fact, a well-lit retail business is a place where police can draw positive attention to their community policing efforts. Additionally, it provides a safe place for people to go. We think that our chief put it best at one of the special committee meetings last week. Stores being closed doesn't mean police don't have to patrol. In fact, it is the opposite. Businesses are a lot more likely to be burglarized or broken into when they are not open, and their security or loss prevention teams are not on duty. Additionally, the ordinance, as written, infers retail businesses are the cause of public drunkenness, public drinking, and loitering. We have not seen any data which supports this inference and do not believe that retail businesses significantly contribute to these problems. A major concern of citizens is that the new retail operation in our community will create more traffic. If we are concerned about traffic, then why would we limit the hours that consumers can shop locally? Therefore, condensing all of the shopping into hours when traffic is at its worst. Shouldn't we encourage shopping at off-peak hours to minimize traffic? Multi-store retail businesses need to convey a consistent message to the marketplace on hours, pricing, etc. It's disruptive to say things like, all stores are open 24 hours, except in Sherwood. No matter how a business tries to convey that message, it gets garbled. Retail can generate up to 40% of sales between Thanksgiving and 2 to 3 weeks after Christmas. There are other annual important sales flights, such as back to school, Halloween, etc. And all of these are crucial to any retailer's bottom line. Regulating the hours for big box is tough, but hours restricting business the last 6 weeks of the year create real anguish for any retailer. Most importantly, this ordinance threatens sales volumes, which in turn means Sherwood's ability to retain job opportunities. A large retailer in Sherwood said that if they were to decrease in sales by 11% from 2012, then they would go from being a large volume retailer to a small volume retailer, which would result in cutting jobs and changing hours. And they fear that regulations like an hour of operation ordinance would impact their bottom line. Retailers support 1 in 4 U.S. jobs. Late night jobs at a retail could improve the unemployment rate locally, which is 6.6% in Washington County, and provide additional jobs for local residents. Whether that is for a full-time management position or a part-time position for a Sherwood High School student or a stay-at-home mom needing part-time employment. The Sherwood Chamber of Commerce is concerned about the message we're sending to current and future businesses. According to the City of Sherwood's website, the city continues to struggle with unbalanced tax base. As an individual property owner, I can testify to that. If we support the creation, expansion, and sustainability of businesses in our community, our lopsided tax base will become more balanced. We all know that taxes paid for by businesses support city services, including police, parks, libraries, schools, and more, above and beyond what it costs to serve those businesses. This, in turn, lowers the tax expense for each Sherwood homeowner, which improves the quality of life in Sherwood. The Sherwood Chamber of Commerce cannot identify an existing problem that warrants the need for this ordinance. Additionally, we have identified potential and unintended consequences related to this implementation, such as contributing to traffic problems, inconsistency in business operations, hurting Sherwood's competitive marketplace, decreasing retail sales volume in Sherwood, reducing current job and preventing future job growth, limiting current and future opportunities to balance the Sherwood tax base. Please consider the long-term implications and not the short-term emotional impulse reaction in the hours of operation proposal. Thank you.
Kevin Bates.
Ditto. Hard act to follow. My name is Kevin Bates, 16419 Southwest Wildlife Haven Court, here in Sherwood, owner of Symposium Coffee. So sounds like everyone's in agreement so far to not move ordinances forward, and so that's nice to hear. I don't support any ordinances proposed that restrict daily operations of any business, and the reason being, I believe that when you restrict businesses in such a way, you begin to limit free market. And this should only be done if it is an endangerment to our community. And so, number one, I don't believe, and there's no proof so far, with the activity that the ordinances are regulating, except for hazardous waste, that there might be an endangerment to our community. Although, with the hazardous waste ordinance, there needs to be environmental studies adopted and also looked at, and organizations coming in so that proof is noted, and then the ordinances should be created off of studies done. We don't have time for those studies. We haven't had time for those studies. Shouldn't move forward. There's no proof that it's going to increase any costs or anything like that. So there is proof, though, that restricting businesses in such a way affects business income. And so tonight I just want to bring attention to something that I've been thinking about. Is we are on record as saying that this committee that has been formed is directly connected to the development of Walmart. Let me phrase that differently also, or at least it's been alluded to or suggested strongly that this committee has been developed because of the development of Walmart. We're on record saying that as a council. So, is Walmart going to hand us a bill if we send ordinances through when we change the rules? Are they going to find us irresponsible as a community? And if we start regulating business hours and overnight camping and their income-generated activity, I find it irresponsible to move anything forward without that being analyzed and addressed if we run any kind of run the risk of any kind of lawsuit. So let's just move forward, I think. It's time to move forward, disband the committee, discard all the ordinances. I believe that the result of it would hurt our community. I honor the work that has been done. But I do believe that it was done, or the committee was formed out of reaction and out of anger or response to that anger. And so I think a different process needs to be adopted. Thank you.
Nancy Taylor. Nancy Taylor.
Ooh, my time started. Okay. It is easier to resist at the beginning than at the end. Leonardo da Vinci. I'm sure you all know who he is. I've heard a lot of feeling today. I'm going to express some thinking. Camping, hours of operation, hazardous waste. I can't think of a community that wouldn't care about these things. It's been proven in other markets that this has kept big box stores from coming in. Sherwood is not a destination where people come and shop on a daily basis unless they live here and are going to Safeway and Albertsons and even Target to buy food, basic necessities. I don't think people in Lake Oswego consider this a place to come and do their basic shopping for back-to-school clothes, for Christmas. And I don't think they come over here to buy the Thanksgiving turkey. I just don't think that happens. Not sure, but I think I'm correct. I've heard some other concerns tonight about various people on your board, Mayor, that perhaps need to consider why they're sitting there and what the future of the board will be if they continue to sit on it. Again, I would like to join Ms. Sass in what she had to say. Mr. Langer, I'm sorry, I think it's time for you to resign, step down. You will cost the town quite a bit of money in a special election coming up. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Tony Bevel.
Yeah, thank you. My name is Anthony Bevel, Southwest Lindley, Sherwood, Oregon. Lived here 18 years. I make no bones about it. We all know why this committee is here now, why it was formed. In my eyes, a property was sold to a company, and it pretty deceptive. It didn't seem very clear. The citizens mobilized, petitioned, and the city council decided that a special committee was to be formed to present proposal. As far as I'm concerned, they didn't go far enough. The work is half done there. To just throw these three proposals to the side, I think you'd have a riot in Sherwood. I mean, what are you telling the citizens? You have to consider these, and you have to formulate them, and you have to present them to the citizens of Sherwood. The reason why I feel so strongly about Walmart is they're not good for Sherwood. They're not good for America. I mean, I know that they're the biggest corporation in the world and billions and billions of dollars. That doesn't mean that they're good. And they're not good for Sherwood. They're going to cause irreparable harm to this community. Chief Goff, I dropped off a 28-page report about crime with Walmart. I know you're a busy man. If you read it, I think it's a little bit enlightening that Walmart is not, you can't go out there and hang dollar bills from your pocket and not have them picked. But that's that. The committee, the citizens aren't against business in Sherwood. We want business. I mean, a fool would say, hey, we don't want business. We just want to stay that sleepy little community that I arrived at, and I'd like it, but, it's not going to happen. We're not against business. We're against a business that is Walmart. I mean, I don't think you have to, I don't have to go into it. I mean, you can read, you listen to the radio, you listen to the television, and tell me one instant that it's presented in a way that you'd want to go shop there. I don't. I mean, hell, I'll pay 20 cents more for milk, 50 cents more for hamburger, or I don't know what else, but I won't be there anyway. I think as far as anything, you can trust that businesses will do what they should do to be good citizens to the community, to the citizens. But I'm a guy, I trust, but I want you to verify it, okay? So that's why you need these ordinances. And as far as I'm concerned, you need more of them. And, the committee, the council and the special committee, I think you've been kind of kicked around a lot harshly. I know I've done my kicking, and I hope, that everyone wakes up. And I know you're bored. That's okay. I think something good has happened out of this, and I'm looking forward to meeting a lot of other people here in Sherwood. Met so many nice people. I think that's the good thing, and I think people are going to become more involved with this. So I've used my time. Thank you.
Jennifer Harris.
Hello, Jennifer Harris, 21484 Southwest Rollage Avenue. Didn't have a nicely written speech by anybody and wasn't planning to talk, but here I am again. Thank you to the City Council for being here every week that you're here and on the days you're not here, and our special committee for being here almost every day of the week for the last few weeks. I don't know that I could have made such a strong commitment. They really gave up their personal lives to be here for us, and I think first of all, to even consider throwing the ordinances aside is disrespectful to the entire committee and their time that they spent here. So I would encourage you not to just throw them aside and table them. I also would encourage you to actually read the ordinances in their entirety. You might notice if you actually read the ordinances for camping that grandma in the driveway is not applicable. It doesn't come into play for the ordinance that the committee came up with. Emergency situations are also considered. The committee spent a long time, and I was not at every meeting, but I was at a lot of them, and they went really in depth and talked about different scenarios that meant something to them because they live here or they work here, not because Walmart's coming here, but because it's important to them. It's important to their lives, their children's lives. The 24-hour operations, again, if you read the ordinance, it does not restrict stocking shelves. It does not restrict your trucks coming in and unloading. It does not restrict the cleaning crew from coming in and cleaning. It simply restricts business hour operations for the public to be there, meaning your 20-year-old daughter doesn't have to be at work at 3 a.m. She can be at home sleeping. I encourage you to think about proactivity versus reactivity. I think in most situations, being proactive tends to be a better option than reactive. If we decide to wait until the problem is already there, not only do we have to clean up what has already been done, but then address it in the future. If we can be proactive and manage these situations now, it might cost us some money, but it might save us a lot of money down the road, especially when we're talking about toxic waste. Businesses have been regulated since pretty much forever. I don't think any of us would say that government doesn't belong in regulating business. We wouldn't have a minimum wage. We wouldn't have any kind of fair trade. We wouldn't have any kind of good business going on in any place in the United States if government was not regulating business in some way. Camping is banned pretty much everywhere in the United States. You can find a town, a city that has camping restrictions, ordinances. Even in Oregon, they're everywhere. This is not new. This is not rocket science. This is not earth-shattering, oh my gosh, Sherwood's passing a camping ordinance. It's mundane, it's normal, it's just what it is. We haven't had it in the past. Doesn't mean we shouldn't have it in the future. If we don't have a problem with it now, doesn't mean we shouldn't deal with it now. I just think also, in case we had a couple people at the ordinances talking about the people they have that come and camp. I just wanted to put it out there that there are 3 RV parks within 3 to 7 miles of Sherwood. You can actually run 3 miles. I can run 3 miles and I am out of shape. So 3 to 7 miles, we have plenty of places for people to camp if they need to camp. We have emergency situations set up. So again, I encourage you to read the regulations and understand. I know they're in, you've had them, they're out there, but kind of the scare tactics I've heard in this particular meeting about not passing the ordinances, those people haven't even read them because most of the things they're trying to scare you with are irrelevant to the way the special committee wrote the ordinances. I think that's all. Thank you.
That was the last request to speak. So I'm closing the public testimony. And did Murda want to come? Did you want to come back up? Come on back up. You want a break?
I gotta say, it's Myrta.
Myrta.
but thanks, Mayor Middleton.
I will. Okay, I'm
That's okay.
And now it goes back to council to discuss some of the issues that came up now. Go ahead. Did anybody have any questions? Nothing?
Well, I have a question. Do we talk about one at a time now, since we've taken public testimony on all three? Is it
We
time to
can,
divide
since it
them
doesn't
up?
seem like anybody has any general questions.
Mr. Mayor, can I
Mr.
ask
Mayor.
the city attorney a question?
Sure.
Pam, I've been asked by two people tonight to recuse myself. Can you clarify for me, are these three ordinances only for the current project or for the entire city? And the second question is, why would I need to recuse myself legally? Is there any legal reason to do that?
Thank you. Councilor Langer, these ordinances, as written and as proposed, would apply citywide to affected entities that were covered by their terms. So they're not specifically directed at any one property or business. As far as your obligation, you are required under state law to recuse yourself if you have an actual conflict of interest, and that's defined in state law as a clear demonstration that you will, in fact, either achieve a pecuniary benefit or avoid a cost for yourself, your business, your family, a long list of relatives. So the requirement to step down is a fairly high threshold, only based on an actual showing of a financial impact to you, either for the better or for the worse. You always have the discretion to make a choice to step down when you feel that you have a potential conflict of interest, which the law defines more liberally as interest in a proposal or non-financial interest. I don't see how I certainly don't see there's any requirement that you step down based on actual bias, based on what I know about the situation and how these ordinances would if they're citywide regulations. As I always advise elected officials, it is you are the judge of your own impartiality under Oregon law, unless it's an actual bias, i.e. direct monetary gain or avoidance of cost. So you get to decide. There's no standard of appearance of propriety or appearance of bias in Oregon. The standard has to do with your own judgment about your own impartiality.
How would the class exemption apply in this case?
Interesting question. Even if you could be shown to have an interest, what the class exemption provides is if a council member is taking action on an item and they are affected somehow, then if they're part of a class, they are still allowed to vote on that item. The reason being that you wouldn't be able to enact legislation of general effect. They recognize that councilors, elected officials, are members of their community. So, for example, if you owned a business in Sherwood and one of these new ordinances was approved by the voters or passed on to the voters by council at this stage, you would be part of a class because there's a huge number of businesses that would be affected. There's no definitive number for what is a class. There are cases and opinions from the Government Standards and Practices Commission, now the Oregon Ethics Commission. 10,000 is clearly a class. 2 or 3 is not. Between that, I would say, I would opine that the number of businesses operating in Sherwood would constitute a class. So you would be eligible to vote based on that exception if someone were to challenge you. But I also don't feel there's any showing of actual bias either.
Thank you.
What was the other question before?
The other question was whether we wanted to consider these one at a time moving forward. Right. Certainly, as you make motions, they'll have to be one at a time. If you're going to be moving these forward to referral, it might just be a good idea to move forward with these one at a time, just to focus the conversation, but that's up to you.
Well, if we're going to take them independently, we could start with the hazmat one and just work our way down, because now we're going to do into council deliberations. Go ahead.
Starting with me?
You might as well.
Well, I've read all the ordinances, thought about them, and I've got to agree with Neil Shannon. I don't really understand the hazard ordinance at all. I can kind of understand maybe regulating hours, maybe, and maybe the camping thing, but at this point, I don't agree with any of them. And I appreciate the work that the committee put into it, but in my opinion, I don't think we should be voting for any of them.
Go ahead.
I agree. I, especially with having done some work in a wetland-sensitive area, know that I made a list. There are the DEQ, Clean Water Services, EPA, Army Corps of Engineers, Fish and Wildlife, who already regulate. And I'm guessing that if there were a hazardous spill, there is already a response and a process in place. And so I see a great redundancy, in particular in that one. But I spoke very clearly at the very beginning of this process a couple of months ago that I felt that the scope of ordinances would be outside of what I felt our job was to do, and I still feel that way.
Linda?
Pass for now.
Well, I'm big on the public process. I think they went to a lot of time, a lot of effort. They had the list of ideas to come up with, and I think they did a good job, and I think we should go to public vote. If the public doesn't want them, they'll vote them down. And I take a little issue with the chamber because it seems like they'll do business at any expense. They wanted the apartments over here. How are we going to take care of the kids that are all coming in here now? Our schools are full. I think we need business, but we need to drive the business we want in this community, not what people from the outside want to bring in. If they don't like it, they'll vote no on it. And I think that the first thing on our goals, it says the city of Sherwood will provide for the safety and security of the community and its citizens, and I think those ordinances were written for that purpose. And so that's my feeling on that. And I think that in the long run, we don't have problems yet, but this will curtail any of the problems that we could have in the future. And I think I have experience at this. I've been doing public service for about 37 years, and I don't want to drive business out, but I want us to be selective and bring the best business as we can to the community. That's my feelings.
Well, I agree with Mayor Middleton. I feel that I very much respect the special committee for all of the time and effort that they have put into fine-tuning all of the questions that were before them. They tackled more than what has come to us today. And I think that they tackled the bigger issue, and that's the pit fight that had turned into the I'm for the ordinance. Well, if I'm for the ordinance, then that means I'm against business. I'm against the ordinance. Well, if I'm against the ordinance, then I'm against the community. I think that what we created here are ordinances that people can choose. They can vote in the privacy of their own, in Oregon, home, or at the polls, without any recourse, without garbage being put on their lawn, without ridicule. And if the public wants the ordinances, then they will pass. And if it is, arguments have been made, the vocal 10%, then they will fail. And I believe in the process. I believe in the process of democracy, and I think that we should allow the people to decide. So I am for this ordinance. I guess I'm supposed to talk on just one, but I'm for this ordinance. Being sent to the voters, that's what I'm for. In all clarity, that is what I'm for. Matt?
First, I'd like to thank the special committee. That was a lot of work, Mirta, especially all your chair work that you had to do. That I attended a few of the meetings just to watch, and it looked like it was quite a bit. So thanks for doing that for us. Obviously, you did a lot of work also offline before and after the meeting. So thank you very much. I'm actually all for these ordinances going to a vote, because I think that's a great way to let the citizens decide it. Unfortunately, what the data that I've gathered over the course of the last several weeks doesn't indicate that there's even a slim chance of them passing. And I'll read just one email of many that I got, just one line out of it. Somebody wrote, "I personally have not met one informed and reasonable resident or business owner that thinks these proposed ordinances are indispensable." And then they go on and say a bunch of other stuff, but I've got quite a bit of that sort of input. I know a lot of times in this room we hear that everybody is for them, but we get a lot of emails and other sort of correspondence that indicates otherwise. And then there was a current article in the Oregon Live that speaks to a couple examples of this. And so in being budget conscious, there's no sense in wasting city taxpayer dollars. But the coastal city of Newport recently went through a similar situation. They had a divided council. They voted 4-3 to send the ordinance to the voters, and it ultimately was rejected in May. And I think that's where this particular ordinance is headed if we did that. And in addition to that, I believe I agree with what Neil Shannon said, and I believe all the EPA, DEQ, and other agency regulations currently handle this, and there's no sense in Sherwood getting involved in this particular ordinance.
I'd also like to thank the committee and Mirta for the work you've done. You presented it well for us to read and understand. And I like the fact that I got the dialogue of what went on, in a lot of the meetings. I understand it could not have been easy because a lot of different viewpoints were presented, and also because you had such a small amount of time. It was worrisome to me that we even put a group to that task, and you guys performed very well, and we really appreciate it. What we got out of it was a batch of ordinances, particularly we're talking about the hazardous substance one right now, and you gave us what we have to chew on now. And I think before you guys sat down, we didn't really have that. We didn't even know what we were talking about. We were talking about gun ordinances and employee bill of rights types of things, and we really didn't know which ones would stop Walmart, which ones were really about Walmart. It certainly started off as a let's stick it to Walmart, and I think what we've heard tonight is that in many people's minds, it still is about let's stick it to Walmart. Now, obviously, that's not everyone. In other people's minds, this is about what's best for Sherwood moving forward, proactive, reactive, whatever. But there's definitely a lot of let's stick it to Walmart out there, and that's what's worrisome to me about putting it to a vote, because I think that how much pain can we inflict on one business discussion has been unhealthy in this town, and I haven't liked it. And I think that we're not ready. We're not at a point to continue that type of an unhealthy discussion. And so I completely agree with Mr. Shannon. I completely agree, and I think Mr. Campbell gave us well thought out comments that I agree with. That's kind of where I'm at. But I disagree that it's necessarily unwise to be reactive. I think writing new regulations on imposing them on business should be something that perhaps reactive is a little bit better. Let's not pretend there's a problem or think there is a problem, a monster under the bed or in the closet. Let's see if there is a problem. I'm not convinced there's a problem. Now, overnight camping, that could be a problem, but the problem I think of is generators and noise. Well, we have noise ordinances, and so to me, putting these out to the vote sends a message to the community that there's a problem to fix, which I don't believe there is. And it also puts back the argument of how bad can we stick it to Walmart back to the community who's still talking about Walmart, and I don't want to do that either. I think these are ordinances that we as a council could make decisions on if we needed to, if there's a problem, or we can put it to the vote if there's a problem. But right now, I just really appreciate what we've got back from the committee and what they've done, and it gives us something to think about and work on when the time comes. I don't think the time is now. That's me.
Okay, Bill, now you're on camping. Oh, I'm sorry.
So
You're on
Am I-
hazmat.
right, right. I know a couple of counselors commented in general, so I'm talking just about hazardous substance regulation. This ordinance is complicated, very complicated. Councilor Folsom alluded to a situation 3 years ago in which we wanted to put a platform down in Stella Olson Park in a dry stream bed, and that required no less than 4 agencies to sign off on 15 yards of plywood. Fish and Wildlife, Clean Water Services, Army Corps of Engineers, and the Bureau of State Lands. So, and that was just plywood that we were putting on a public space. So I have reservations about this resolution. This was not something I remember reading a lot about in the petitions that people signed. In my 15 and a half years in Sherwood, I haven't really known of us having environmental spills or issues that haven't been contained that our own city staff has had to respond to. My concern about this ordinance is basically we adopted or drafted an ordinance that came from another community. What I don't know is how long that community considered this ordinance. You know, how much research they did, how much data did they have. So I'm reluctant to move forward at this time because I don't think we have enough data to move forward. I'm not really sure how it applies to private or public entities. I'm not sure that our staff has the qualifications or the training to respond to issues of removal of hazardous substances. I'm not sure what the legal issues, and I may ask Pam to comment on this. One of the lines says, it is not the intent of 8.16.120 of this code for the city to act as if EPA or DEQ will act. So in that section, it assumes that for some reason EPA and DEQ will not act. But I'm not under that impression. That's on page 3 of the ordinance. And so I'm reluctant to act on this ordinance right now because I don't feel like I have enough information. I don't feel our staff has enough training and or expertise to handle this. I'm also worried about, on page 4, we talk about the city manager reimbursement for reasonable costs. The city manager denies reimbursement. The person may appeal the city manager's decision to a municipal court within 15 days of the city manager's written denial. We don't have anything like this in a municipal court right now, to my knowledge, do we? We're not dealing with hazardous waste or underground tanks at municipal court. We don't have any experience. Okay. And then also, in order to ensure completion of the removal action, the city manager may require a bond in an amount sufficient to cover the cost of the removal action. I'm not sure that our city manager has the training, to determine the level of a bond that would be needed for removal of such hazardous waste. And so I have some reservations about where the committee was going with this ordinance, and I'm not understanding how we don't have agencies available to us in the form of Clean Water Services, Tualatin Valley Fire District, DEQ. We have a number of DEQ sites in our own town that we're working with DEQ to get cleaned up. These are multi-million-dollar sites that we're trying to get grants for, and haven't yet been successful because just money is just not available right now. So I guess my reservations about this ordinance is I don't really understand how we'll administer it, and how we'll administer it any differently than any other hazardous waste organization would deal with a spill that would happen in our town. So those are my comments.
Mayor Middleton, may I make a couple
Sure.
of statements? Is that okay?
Sure.
As the special committee reviewed the regulation of hazardous waste, one of the, I guess the crux of the issue was immediate action. This ordinance is very similar to that in other municipalities, in which a city manager is afforded the opportunity to react quickly and mitigate damages, and perhaps not acting alone, but rather cooperating with others. As we've seen in other municipalities, the DEQ and other state and federal agencies, oftentimes there's a delay in their ability to react. This would afford the city manager and others an opportunity to react. And this was something that was supported by staff. So it does concern me that as a majority of the council is perhaps not lending their ear to the professional direction of our city staff, and that concerns me on behalf of the community. I feel like we need to, as a city, be proactive, and a part of why this committee was formed was for you to have an opportunity to have citizen input. And I value that. I value the opportunity to have served on the committee as the chairperson. The decision to draft this language was rather simple, in that this affords Sherwood, like other municipalities, an opportunity to quickly respond and to mitigate damages not only to people, but to the environment wholly. And for that reason, I'm hopeful that both Tom and Joe have an opportunity to talk to you a little bit about this and how this ordinance is not unique in nature, but rather mimics what other municipalities have ordained for many, many years, for decades. And it concerns me that there does appear to be concern ordaining or adopting this kind of language within Sherwood.
So can you speak to what Mirta said? Did I say that right?
You want to start first? Sure. Let me start on kind of a general thing, and then I'll move into that specific question. I guess I've heard the conversations here, and one thing that we're going to need to understand from a staff and level and for the city attorney's office is what are we going to do with these ordinances? Particularly, I kind of heard a general conversation that this ordinance isn't something that you guys are going to want to refer to the voters, and that's something we have to need to know tonight. But then the other question is this something that council would like staff to continue to work on and actually turn this into an ordinance that you could potentially do with something with in the future? So I'm a little less clear on that, and I think at some point in time we need to make sure that we're very clear at this meeting as to what action we're taking, because specifically, like I said, if we don't make decisions on getting ballot titles and other things prepared, then it just won't happen for that purpose. So that's just kind of a general comment in regards to this. As far as other cities that have done that, certainly Eugene's done this. I'm not aware of any others that have done this particular ordinance, and I don't think in the research that Barry Elsner came up with other cities that they had listed who had this. I will say that, it does give an additional tool to the city manager and to the city to maybe deal with situations that aren't as immediate in nature, that might slip through something that the federal government or the state government wasn't taking care of. Typically, if it's a major issue, most of those issues are going to be taken care of on that level. However, there may be a situation, and I'm assuming that's what Eugene ran into, is where they felt like they needed a little bit additional local control in case there were situations that came up that they felt that weren't being taken care of, that would have been better taken care of by a local jurisdiction. I guess that may be something, if we're not going to refer it to voters and you do want staff to look at this more carefully, we can start having some conversations with them and finding out, okay, well, why did you put this in place at the time? What have you seen since you put it in place? Because this has been around actually for a number of years. I think almost a decade. This particular ordinance has been around, and kind of get some experience from them to see, okay, well, it's been around for 6, 8, 10 years, whatever it is. Have you used it? Has it been something productive for your community? And ask those broader type questions. So those are your kind of options. If we have to do something tonight, then there's a couple things that I noted in here that might need to be changed. If you're thinking you might want to have a broader conversation with the council and have staff do some research and bring it back to you because you want to consider it more, then certainly we can ask those broader questions and get you better answers.
I'd be willing to do that one on that ordinance only, since it is, I was here at the meetings, and it is a little confusing, and I think staff could bring back some more information to us, and they would have a better understanding of what their obligations were on that too. So I would agree only on that one. But I do think it would be good to bring back and look at.
Mr. Mayor, could we just clarify as far as direction goes? I wanted to echo it. Sorry to interrupt you, Robin.
No, go ahead.
What Tom said, I'm thinking it might be good once the discussion on this particular ordinance is concluded by council that you call for a motion. Maybe you intended to do that. The motion would be either to refer it to a ballot or not to, in the discretion of the motion maker, and then we'd have a vote, and that would be clear. And then the second question would be clarification of whether council as a whole is interested in further research. That could be done by motion or by consensus, either way.
Well, now I don't know. Well, I'll just say what I was going to say. No. Thank you. From my perspective, I would be interested in hearing, like you said, is there a problem? Why is there a problem? Is there really a hole that needs to be filled? How did it impact the other jurisdiction that adopted this ordinance? It sounds like there's just one. And kind of why it came on the radar, But the other thing is, I think that we are all about common sense. And if this is an issue that's facing our community, and we're really concerned about it, I don't know that we need to go to the voters with the expense. We can do the research and do the work. That's just my perspective and opinion. And so from my perspective, to understand why we're talking about this, talk about short time, but the one thing I don't want to do is refer to the ballot something that we don't know how we're going to implement or how we're going to pay to implement it. And we're not even sure why we're referring it to the voters. And that's where I'm at on this now.
I agree with Robin. I really don't think we have the expertise on our staff to deal with hazardous waste unless you guys tell me differently. So I would like for you to, look into it. If there's a real problem and we need to get a hazmat team in here to help us make decisions, I'm willing to look at something like that.
Yeah, well, I think more than the expertise is certification. If you're dealing with hazardous materials, you're going to need certain certifications, but that's certainly something that we could contract out if you needed to deal with these situations. So while certainly I don't think staff has a lot of expertise in those areas, it's certainly expertise that we could readily get. There are people with those qualifications in the area if we needed to.
We did years and years ago, we had a problem with a rolling meth lab that rolled over, and at that time there was funding to deal with those. There is no more funding. So to recover money, it might be necessary to do something like that. So, and we do have certified people in the fire department, so they could work with us. So,
I agree with Mayor Milton. I think on this ordinance only that we would be prudent to look further and make sure that we're covering all of the bases before referring it.
So do we move that we table? No. That we do not take any action on this ordinance tonight, either to draft, we're not going to draft a ballot title, we are not going to draft an explanatory statement. However, we are going to ask staff to continue to look into drafting an ordinance to come back to the council in the near future, after we've had a chance to coordinate with agencies such as DEQ, TVF&R on the best way to have an ordinance that allows us not only a quicker response, but the opportunity to find a way to pay for the response on the cleanup. That's my
Second.
motion. Okay.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Councillor Graham, I guess.
It passed.
Okay.
Now we'll move on to camping. Start with you again, Bill.
Once again, I don't know if we have a problem with camping. I have an RV myself. I have parked in Walmart parking facilities several times. I enjoyed the fact that I got to do that. So I don't think we have a camping problem. So I am, however, willing to at least throw it back to the voters.
Are you done? My turn. I really appreciated the one citizen's comment who said, I'd rather save the voters money, and if we think we might have a problem, go to the business and ask them. Because I think that's something that the mayor and I were in a meeting and we asked them, and they said, we generally post signs that say no camping. And then the enforcement falls to them and their property management team. And so I think doing the job of the council is to be fiduciarily responsible for our money. And I think that before we have a problem and legislate against a problem, I'd rather be proactive in asking the business, saying the will of the community is that this doesn't become a problem. Can you please not do this? So I would rather not legislate for a problem that I don't know exists.
Come back to you.
I'll pass, yeah.
Well, I disagree on this one. I think that we should have the ordinance. I've worked in communities where it is a problem. I don't camp, don't have an RV, and would not camp overnight in a Walmart. That's just me. I don't camp. But I think that it is an issue that this community doesn't need. We don't need people camping in parking lots all night. If you say it's up to the owner of the business, there's no enforcement tool. You say no camping, how are you going to enforce it? It's very difficult. If you have an ordinance on the books, they can enforce it and get rid of those people, and that's where I'm coming from on this one. Camping, we've got state parks, national parks, we've got everything. We don't need it in downtown Sherwood, and even out on Walmart or anywhere in town that is not allowed. They are allowed in the residential areas if you read the ordinance. The homeowners associations have 10 days, some of them have 3 days, so it's not going to restrict that. It's just going to restrict people from camping overnight on the private property, and that's what I don't think we want to start that here. And it kind of hurts other businesses too that are in the camping business that have campgrounds. Why don't you go there? It's only a few miles away. So, I mean, I don't even think we should have it. That's why I'm saying that we need to have an ordinance against camping.
Mayor Middleton. Pardon the interruption. IT needs to switch the tape.
Oh, okay.
You can give them just a minute to do that, please. Yeah, so there's audio.
Okay, we're calling it back in session. You're next.
Yeah. I don't do it. IT does it.
We're still on camping.
Yes.
Did you want want to circle back?
Or well, go down and then come back to you.
Nope. Okay.
Linda?
Well, I haven't spoken yet.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you need to say something.
She will.
She will. She
I
likes
will.
to be the last.
I do.
Okay. That's no fair.
Of seniority.
I'm always-
Okay, we're called back in order, and I'm talking about camping. So
You're a B.
once again, I feel that this should go to the voters, and I think that we should be proactive, not reactive. But I think the voters should decide. So I'm in favor of sending it to the voters.
You're done already?
I'm done.
Question for the chief. That hot seat. What sort of crime statistics do we have around camping problems currently in Sherwood at retail facilities such as, say, 7-Eleven, Subway, and Sherry's? And say the parking lots for Home Depot, Target, Albertsons, Safeway.
Excuse me, Councilor Langer, can I interject for a minute?
Sure.
So, when we first started talking about this issue, it was overnight parking, right? Not camping. Correct, Council?
Correct.
So, because on the ordinance it says regulation of camping. You know, if anybody's been reading what's been happening in downtown Portland, they have a camping problem in downtown Portland right on the sidewalks. And so I wanted to be careful that we clarify that what I thought we were talking about is overnight parking in retail commercial zone or retail zones, correct? And not camping, like camping for days on end or.
Well, certainly.
And is there a distinction legally, I guess?
I think there is a distinction.
Okay.
The question, I think, is certainly there were people that were coming forward with issues regarding to camping and overnight parking and RVs and all sorts of other things. And you were starting to have a conversation about something, but then you gave the authority to the special committee without really any limitations on what they could look
Sure,
at.
okay.
So they basically took the advice and decided to go down the camping route. And that's what they came back to you with.
So I'm sorry to interrupt, Councilor Langer, but is there a legal difference between regulating overnight parking and the actual legal term of camping, like what Portland's going through?
Go on. There.
There you go.
The ordinance defines camping, and it is different than parking. The way the committee chose to write it, it talks about preparing to sleep, cooking, things that you
Right,
wouldn't
I
do
read
if you're
that.
just parking.
And how is that not able to be defendable in Portland? That they're having trouble getting rid of people who are
Well,
camping?
they're camping on the sidewalks, I think.
So
which
that's
is
public
different.
property.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay.
But they are enforcing it now.
Thank you.
They're
Yeah.
trying, yeah.
Yeah. Councilor Langer, I'm sorry.
No problem. Back to you, chief.
I was hoping you'd forget your question.
Or at least until you finished your cookie, huh?
Yeah. So I don't have any statistics on that at all because I didn't look to get any. I didn't go down that route. So in terms of when you say statistics, I'm interpreting that to mean data, numbers. I don't have any.
Did the special committee request any of that stuff? I'm assuming no, since you don't
No.
have that. Been. Okay. How about the the purpose of this particular one is to help decrease problems with regard to public urination, public defecation, and theft of water. Was there a request for data about that sort of crime currently? Is there? I'm trying to get at do these problems exist now?
Okay. And I want to make sure I get it kind of really what you're looking for. There wasn't any requests for any specific data or any type of data of me at all. I was asked to come to one meeting and have a Q&A session, which I did. I came prepared with some data specific to, activity at retail outlets. But I don't know how I, quite frankly, would pull that specific data regarding those kinds of things. Having said that, I think the bigger issue to get at is this something that we do and or could deal with? And the answer to that is yes. We have had, although very few so far, in my tenure here, but we have had people set up camps on different sections of property, including tarps, sometimes tents, sometimes not tents. And so those issues that are mentioned do occur. I mean, they find a facility, they do those kinds of things. I don't know if they steal water necessarily, but they do. There has been camps.
Are those activities on their private property, or are they trespassing?
They're trespassing.
So do we have a current trespassing ordinance to deal with that?
We do have trespassing statutes and ordinances.
Do you need another ordinance for camping to give you more leverage against it, in addition to the trespassing?
I guess the best way to answer that is what I told the special committee, and that is that I believe this is would be a useful ordinance to have that would allow us to have a very clear tool to address this if it happened again or if it got any worse. And there is a clear distinction, as has already been made, in my mind, about the overnight parking issue, which is kind of overnight lodging in a lot as opposed to camping. And I had a discussion with the special committee about that as well. Basically, same position. I'm certainly not suggesting we have a problem with that, but it has happened, and we have had to deal with it. And it would be a very useful resource to just be able to say, hey, that doesn't happen. We don't do that. You need to move on.
Okay. Thanks, Chief. And addressing one of the questions that I heard in testimony, based on the current language, how do the Cub Scouts and those kind of guys how do they go about getting a variance, and how much is the fee?
Tom, did you want to take that, or would you like me to tackle it?
If
Great.
you'd like me to tackle
Yes.
it, I'd be happy to. So this gives the authority to the city manager to basically set up a process to get a variance. I'm sure we would do as we typically do. We would have a form that's readily available for people to fill out on the internet. There aren't any fees proposed in this regulation. Typically, that would be a part of our fees that we set, and we haven't proposed any. I'm not sure that there would be any fees for this. If they would be very small, but that would be something that would come before you before a separate resolution for you guys to consider sometime down the road. But we don't have any anticipation of doing that because we really don't expect very many requests.
So just this last week, I was driving up Lad Hill Road, and I took a right at Brookman, and I saw there was a tent out in the front yard. And not sure if it's still there or not. Anybody that drives that way frequently might recognize it. And so I was thinking that was a good example of what somebody brought up here. And so I'm assuming that resident would have to get a variance. Is that right, and pay the fee? Is that the way I'm understanding this? So they'd have to come in here and fill out a form?
No, it's only for areas open to the public. If it's private property, that wouldn't be considered open to the public. So it would be parking lots or those type of things where you would expect the public to be able to come in and do some sort of shopping or other use there. So on a private property where that's not typically open to the public, that wouldn't be allowed, and that's clearly defined in the ordinance.
Okay, so that particular front yard to me looks just as easy to walk across as anybody's parking lot. In fact, I live on a corner lot with some open property like that, and people walk their dogs, and dogs defecate on my lawn and whatnot frequently. And so,
May I address your question?
Sure.
So again, I mean, this isn't about passing through or walking by. This is about camping. And as we defined the areas open to the public, we defined those areas. So just like you more than likely wouldn't put your camp up in my front yard without permission, that is a moot point as it relates to this ordinance. So the intention here, again, as with the other proposed ordinances, is to promote safety issues, promote livability within Sherwood, and lessen impact to adjacent neighborhoods and communities and residents. And as Chief Groff indicated in our question answer format with him, he felt like this would be, and I'm paraphrasing, Chief, so please correct me if I'm wrong, but he indicated that this would be another means of the police having another tool to deal with this issue now and in the future.
So I guess the answer to your question is we talked about this and we were pretty assured by our legal team that this would not apply to the situation that you did because of the way this is written. If you would, well, if you refer this to voters, we wouldn't have time, but if you didn't, then we could take a look at that. But our understanding and based on legal recommendation, and Pam might chip in here, it would not apply to a tent in a front yard on private property.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like from testimony from folks we heard tonight that there's already confusion relative to understanding that. And so there must be some kind of rewording that needs to be done in here to clarify that for folks, because we heard it from more than one person testifying. So until we get the wording crafted, I don't think it's ready to go to the voters. Maybe it needs to at some point, but I don't think it's probably ready to at this point.
Chief, could you say your name for me, please?
She means your last name. Groff.
Thank you.
I'm done. Yep.
Okay, I did speak in general. Councilor Henderson, you're right. I tend to do that because I do feel similarly about all of these. But I'm open about being very conservative. And one element of being conservative is to look at things a little more, shall we say, reactively, and that is don't write a law unless there's a problem. So I'm still not ready to believe there's a big problem here. I still see this as a Walmart issue because it came up because Walmart has this national reputation for having RVs come in and people spend the night there and they move on from there. And then that came to this. I know that's where this came from, and I know that's why we're talking about it. But yes, there's if it went to the voters, the confusion over what we're even discussing, Walmart or the good of the city, is still out there. I don't think we're ready to move on from that. And I also agree that there's confusion over how it's applied, who it applies to, all that. Maybe it's wording, maybe it's just it's happened so quickly and people haven't had a chance to digest it. But this is one we can easily vote on ourselves. And if there was a problem, we could virtually overnight fix it with something like this. But right now, I'm not ready to put this to the voters.
Then I turn it off.
So everybody in the council's had a chance to speak, and thank you, Chief, for your comments, and Mirta for your comments. I have a couple questions, if you don't mind. I wanted to know about on page 2 of the variance. I think Councilor Grant mentioned that it might be a little confusing on who this applies to and who it doesn't apply to if we were to move forward either as a council or refer to the voters. So you have a Class A variance to camp in an open area to the public up to 14 days. So I'm wondering what was unique about 14 days. And then you have a Class B variance, which is 15 days or more in duration. And I'm wondering why you sort of just divided those. And that's not a loaded question in any way. I just am kind of curious. Councilor Folsom asked me at the break, would, if the high school sets up a stand for fireworks, sometimes they bring in an RV. They used to do it like over in Safeway or Albertsons, and they would park that RV, and I guess people would spend the night to make sure that nobody comes and, disrupts the tent. So is that one of the
Absolutely.
situations that you considered?
Absolutely. We considered a number of different possibilities, that being one of them. We looked at things like fireworks stands being set up within parking lots and having the need to set up a motorhome or van for sleeping. We looked at fundraising events that are often done in partnership with the schools, Race for the Cure type events and other Relay for Life events. And so we wanted to assure that those points were very clearly addressed and that the city manager would have the ability and discretion to provide variances in those kinds of examples.
Okay. And the 15 or more day variance?
Again, I mean, it's difficult to predict the duration of a fundraising type of event or community-sponsored activity that would require this kind of a temporary variance. And we felt comfortable making the recommendation to council to rely on the discretion of the city manager.
Okay. And both of the variances have a requirement to apply ahead of time and require a posting, correct?
Correct.
Or maybe that's just Class B is the posting.
Not a posting, but an advance request. So a pre-application.
Prior to a public hearing.
Not a public hearing, just a pre-application. So that, for example, if a Relay for Life event were to occur, the organizers of that event, as a part of a checklist, if you will, would complete this pre-application that would potentially be available online through the city's forms and documents, and they could then submit that easily to the city manager for review.
If it was over 15 days, though, then it would be a variance that came before the city council.
Right.
And there would be
See
a
that
public
for a
hearing.
public hearing.
Correct.
For a Class B.
It's optional whether council wants to hold a public hearing as it's written. It's in your discretion if you feel it's a significant enough request to do that.
So I'm wondering, we've heard from the chief that he feels that this would be a useful tool. Obviously, what we have before us is a draft form, and I'm wondering if the council would consider, instead of referring it to the voters, similar as we do with hazard, we would direct staff to come back much quicker, though, within, say, 30 to 60 days, with an ordinance that would take into account the recommendations of the special committee, and then perhaps anything else that maybe came up tonight that wasn't anticipated. I also wanted to know about your civil penalty is $100 a day. Was that a unanimous recommendation?
No, it was not.
Okay. Okay. Just curious. I think what Councilor Grant said is, instead of referring this to the voters, which is expensive, I think we could adopt something. Ordinances are not set in stone. Ordinances can be amended. They can be repealed. They can be replaced. I think this is something that we at the council level could take care of and work closely with our police department on whether or not this is a useful tool. Make sure that we do a good job of communicating to properties where it would be applicable, like a fireworks stand, or as some of the businesses who work with Robin Hood Theater bring in a RV. And since there's no fee, it's handled through the city manager's office. I think we could take care of this at the council level with staff's assistance drafting an ordinance instead of referring it to the voters, which is expensive. And then if we determine in the future that it needs to be amended, based on feedback from either staff or businesses, we can certainly amend it in the future. So I'm wanting to know if council is willing to consider that as opposed to drafting a ballot title and explanatory statement or referring it to the voters. I don't disagree with Councilor Grant that this is primarily about Walmart, but I think that anytime you bring, an RV onto public property, you have, RVs have, I own an RV and I camp, sorry, Mayor. But we do camp. We don't camp at Walmart though, because we don't go anywhere where there's a Walmart. But I think that there's a little bit of a heightened responsibility when you bring an RV onto a property, and that part of the process, maybe for the variance, would make sure that they're, the RV's in good working order, that they're not letting it sit for too long before they perhaps use a dump station, et cetera, et cetera. So I would like to see us take the very valuable work of the committee and come back with an ordinance that we could adopt at the council level, not referring it to the voters, and if we need to in the future, amend it with feedback from staff or businesses. But I don't see the need to refer it to the voters because I think that the committee's already done a good job. I still have a couple of questions, but I think that, that would easily be addressed primarily just through process. Obviously, ordinances regarding civil penalties are primarily driven by complaint. And so what I think would be an important part of drafting an ordinance would be reaching out to the businesses to let them know what the ordinance is, what they need to do, at what point they need to file a complaint, to educate them about what to be aware of.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
And that it wouldn't just be about Walmart and that policy, but that we make sure that people who want to use public property or private property just make sure that they do it in a way that's considerate and, I guess, regulated to a certain extent. But since there are no fees other than a penalty if you don't comply, we will certainly have people who will probably, if we move forward with this ordinance, who will not know about it and, will pull in an RV. And so part of that will be a process of education. But I'd like to put that out for the council to consider.
I don't agree with it, but that's just me. I think that we sat down, I spent, I don't know how many days out here with you. You wrote good ordinances. We've already got a group on here that's going to vote no matter what. So I don't think referring it out and bringing it back is going to do any good because those people are not going to change their mind. And that's why that's why we have voters. What's it going to cost, $5,000? We spent more than that on the committee. I mean, why did we form this committee if we all came in here with preconceived notions that we weren't going to refer it? I can't believe we're not referring it to the voters, but that's just me. That's just on,
I agree with Mayor Middleton. And for full disclosure, I have spoken with Merita, Jennifer Harris, and Beth Cook in ex parte, and they did not change my opinion in any way of how I feel, just so everyone knows, just to be fully disclosing. And I feel like the public they should have the freedom to vote on it and to define their community the way that they wish. And I think that the committee has worked really hard, and we shouldn't fly in the face of them. And I don't think it's whipping it together. I think they've written a very good ordinance here, and I think we should put it to the public to decide.
So I understand, I hear what's going on. I just refer back to this example of Newport. They went through a similar situation and divided council 4-3. Sent the ordinance to the voters where it was rejected. I just see that's what it looks like to me, is we're just going to spend $5,000 to have it voted down no, when we could work with staff to get something that we could pass at this level that would be enforceable. Otherwise, it gets voted no in a month or two, and we've spun our wheels. I think you've done good work. We've got close, but I don't think it's a good thing to put to the voters and waste money.
May I interject on a couple of points?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Councilor Henderson. One of the things that you brought up was educating the public and allowing businesses an opportunity to understand what would happen if this ordinance was adopted. And as you know, one of our committee members is the executive director at the chamber, and she was very supportive of indicating that should this ordinance be adopted, that the chamber would absolutely do what they could do to educate businesses locally, so that there would be that public outreach. And I feel like that would absolutely be helpful. In terms of your comment, Councilor Langer, I think that, or what I'd like to understand, based on even some of the comments that you had made, Mayor Middleton, is if this ordinance were left to the review of the council, is this something that you would all favor?
Is that a question to all of us, or?
It is.
Okay, so I'd like to ask the council a question. So if the end result is we made a recommendation to form a subcommittee, and the subcommittee made a recommendation to us, and we agree with it. We can't adopt it tonight because it's in draft form. Right. But we, if on the principle, agree with what we're trying to do, what is the point of sending it to the voter if we actually agree with the recommendation of the subcommittee? I mean, if we send it to the voters and it fails, then we haven't accomplished what the subcommittee wanted to do. If we ask staff to draft an ordinance that comes back to us in 2 weeks or 4 weeks, we actually implement the ordinance months in advance of a vote. So is the end result a vote to which the result we accept or don't accept? I mean, ourselves? Or is the result we took the recommendations like we do from the Parks Board, the Planning Commission, the Cultural Arts Commission, the Urban Renewal Advisory Board, they come up to us and we, what did I leave out? Budget. We take the recommendations and we make changes or we implement policy, and that's what this is. This is a policy decision. Do you not disagree? And
I don't disagree.
If we agree with you, is the end result we've enacted something that the special committee was important enough to spend time on, the chief weighed in on it. Putting it out to the voters was, when I made this recommendation and just spoke to members of council about this idea, the idea was we could refer it to voters or we could just take action ourselves if we agreed with the recommendations of the committee.
That was our understanding as well.
Yeah. I mean, did you think it was an either or?
No, I did not.
Okay.
Well, and in theory, I absolutely agree with you, but Mayorta will have to have an answer from each one of the council on whether they do agree with the ordinances or not, because I have not heard that from
and
all
it
of the
would be
councilors.
helpful to understand
right.
if there is support in favor.
So that was my proposal to the council, which is what we're doing. We're having a dialogue at the dais here, are we not?
Right.
But you said you disagree.
Well, because I don't have faith that the council would come back and vote it in, because I think that there is about at least three that do not want the regulation, but one would still put it to the voters. But I think if we came back with the camping ordinance, it'd be 4-3. That's just my feeling, and I don't.
That's what we're hearing.
That's exactly
That's
what's
still a
being
win.
said, and it's not an issue that we can bring it back to us because two of them have already made a final decision. Pretty much, you're not going to change your mind no matter what you do to it. So I just think that we have an obligation, a commitment to let the voters vote on it. If they vote no, case closed. They spoke. The voters spoke.
With all due respect, Mayor Middleton, it would be really helpful for me, on behalf of the committee, to really hear from the councilors whether or not they feel like they could, if presented the opportunity to adopt this policy, whether or not they would indeed support it.
I'll go. Can I go?
Sure.
The first thing I wrote tonight, as I listened to you present the ordinances, and I just have to say you're very well spoken. I appreciate the thoughtfulness with which you convey your message, and you've done just a really professional job of doing that.
Thank you.
The very first thing I said was, we've all read these ordinances because we all wanted to show our commitment to your committee was, can we adopt? Because it saves money. It's the first thing I wrote. I had my own ideas, but everyone knows me in my 5th year. When I get here and I hear staff tell me this is a tool that they would like to have, I pay attention. Because I know that Chief Groth has more information and knowledge about this. If this is a tool he wants in his arsenal, I absolutely will vote to adopt and implement it. I am not sure that what I want is to have more conversation about the highlighted regions. Is that really what we want to say? We do this with Planning Commission. They send us 187 pages on something, and we go through and we try to figure it out. Now, if Chief Groh says to me, Counselor, I think this is a great ordinance, and you adopt it, I support him, and he knows his job. I am a volunteer who respects the experience and authority of our staff. So from my perspective, if we can adopt this in such a way that it will not do harm to our community but will provide the police something that they need, I'm totally for that. But I've really appreciated at least one member of the citizens who testified tonight saying, what is the urgency? Because if we do this in the normal process that we've done it in the past, it can be implemented far earlier than if we took it to the voters. Because we're doing our job. This is a policy decision.
I will support and adopt.
So you just reversed your.
No, she
I didn't.
supports the ordinance
I
if
will
it comes
support
back.
and adopt if it comes back.
Okay.
I just said yes.
Right, but earlier you said you mandated that it go to the voters.
Yes, I want it to go to the voters because I have heard other counselors saying they will not support and adopt. And if we are going to fly in the face of our committee that has done all this work and send it back to staff and not listen to our police chief and rule instead of represent and say, thank you for doing all that work, but I vote no on the ordinance, then I want it to go to the voters. But if the council as a whole is supportive of reworking, small fine-tuning, then I would support and adopt.
Okay. And excuse me if I paraphrase, but I think that's what I said about 15 minutes ago, was can we have a discussion at the dais? Okay, what we have heard in the past is that people feel that issues are not coming forward to the council level, things are happening behind closed doors, or they're not transparent. So that is what we're doing right here, is we're having a discussion. And some of you came tonight with a preconceived notion of another person's vote, which I think is not an appropriate way to approach what we do here. Should be open and transparent, and we should have discussions, and we should rely on staff. They have a lot of expertise, technical expertise, years of experience. And I agree with Robin that when our police chief says this is a tool, and again, I reiterate, an ordinance is not set in stone. We can amend it. We can make it more stricter. We can make the penalty higher, whatever we need to do so that it's a tool for our community. That's what I wanted council to talk about instead of just coming and voting aye or nay. And I'm hoping that that's what's happened tonight. Because I think that the merits of the idea are valid and we can implement them sooner rather than later. And I don't think we need to put it to a vote because I don't think it's necessary. But what is necessary is for us to direct staff to bring back an ordinance in the near future. We're meeting later this month, and we're meeting on the 3rd of September, but we don't need a ballot title. We don't need an explanatory statement, but we do need assistance from legal, obviously, to bring this back. And if there's anything, that legal feels that we didn't cover, we'll have a little bit of, opportunity for review before it comes back. And obviously, every ordinance has a public hearing, so we would have another public hearing to make sure we didn't perhaps miss something or delete something that the committee felt was really important. So my motion is to, may I make a motion?
Sure.
Mayor? So my motion is to,
We didn't hear from Bill, though.
oh, I'm sorry. Councilor Butterfield, did you have something to say?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes I get to go first, so I don't get to hear all the comment. I didn't get to hear what the chief had to say. I didn't get to hear what Linda had to say. So I would support such an amendment, only because it's the right thing to do, but because now I have more information and I can make a better call.
And if we're all answering Mirta's
I haven't.
question, the two of us haven't answered her question
Okay,
either.
sorry, go ahead. I will.
So what I heard
Fine.
the chief say was that when there's a trespassing situation and people setting up pup tents maybe out in some remote ground where they've got to go run some trespassers off, they could use that tool in their toolbox. So I could support passing a camping ordinance if it addresses that need, not just generally where the first sentence in this ordinance that says, except as otherwise provided, a person shall not camp in any area open to the public. That's just too general. So I would have staff refine it down to what the chief actually needs, so he's got a tool. That way it's not so general that it's not Butterfield simple. It's got to be simple. So you can look at it. Do I need an ordinance to set up a tent for the kids to have a picnic tonight or to camp out this weekend in my front yard? Well, the way you read this, obviously from testimony tonight, citizens don't think it's that clear. And it needs to be that clear because we have a lot of youth in this town that are camping, and clearly we're too broad reaching. We right now it's sort of a shotgun approach the way I see it in this ordinance. We get it down to where we're shooting with a rifle, address the chief's needs, and we pass it and move on.
So can I make a comment here? Because I don't know where you guys are going to go with this, but before you do, I want to make sure that we get this cleared up. When it says area open to the public in that paragraph that you mentioned, that should have been capitalized. I don't know what happened. We asked that to be capitalized. It was capitalized in all the drafts, and somehow
It's open to the public defined?
And
Yes.
yes, it is defined. And so
Okay.
I think that caused some of the confusion, because when I first read this, I had the same confusion in that particular item as you well. I've also heard from you clearly that if we do additional work on this resolution, you would like to see that definition
Defined in the
defined more
ordinance.
clearly, especially in regards to private property intents and other things.
Yeah, because even
So-
in the definition, the very first few words say it means all outdoor areas on private property within the city.
Right.
Well, so to me, that means that tent I'm asking about up there at Brookman meets that.
Right. So we would handle that in the definition,
Not
but
over to-
all of the, that's what I want to try to point out is, because we would change this before we came back on the 20th, if you decided to take this to the voters, and make sure that everywhere that where it says area open to the public is capitalized, because I don't know what happened, but somewhere between the third draft and this, that got changed. And I think that is causing some of the confusion, because you can read it. If you go in here and you don't read the definition, you read that, you're going, well,
Right.
college, yeah, I can't do anything. So.
Yeah, and then if you add in there something about where the person happens to be trespassing, then that's fine.
Great, thank you.
Murda, just a quick question. Would you think the committee would support this if we did it that way?
I do.
Okay, we have a motion. Nobody made a
Not
motion. Do we have a motion?
Dave?
Oh, go ahead. We've already talked about it.
First of all, I find it offensive to hear how other members of this council know how I'm going to vote now or in the future. And I think it's more than a little rude. And I think that we discussed things like that early in January, and we decided amongst ourselves we weren't going to make comments like that. I don't even know how I'm going to vote. I don't know how somebody else knows how I'm going to vote. But I will tell you that in its current form, I can't. No. That's not right. I, in its current form, don't think it's ready. But if cleaned up and pinpointed to existing problems, I can support it. I think it's got a lot better chance among us than it does among the voters. But once Walmart comes into it, no, I'm not going to support it. But if it's about the betterment of this city for a legitimate purpose that the chief needs for enforcement, then I'll get behind it. I'm fine with it. And so there's your answer.
You might want to listen to tapes. It was not. Never mind. I'm not going to go there. You know.
Never mind.
Don't, just don't.
Okay. Do we have a motion? That's what I'm saying.
Would you like me to make a motion?
Yes, make a motion.
Okay, I would like to make a motion that we do not we take the recommendations of the special subcommittee. We direct staff to incorporate those recommendations regarding camping and any clarifications open to the public, meaning, maybe an additional category on what, on page 1, it says area open to the public means all outdoor areas on private property within the city to which the public has access. I don't consider that to be a home. I would consider that to be a parking lot or school district or et cetera. But maybe we can further expand that a little bit and bring back an ordinance to adopt with legal's assistance, not referring it to the voters, not generating a ballot title, not generating an explanatory statement, bringing it back and adopting it in as timely manner as possible. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We now go to the business hours.
Thank you.
You may start.
Bill wanted a break from being first.
Oh, I'll pass by.
I'm not quite ready yet either.
Bill.
I'll go first.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'll go first. I am sorry. I have wanted, I listened to the citizens' testimony tonight, lots of them, but I also think I spoke pretty clearly about this early on, I have 5 children. I've had a lot of illnesses in my family, and I am very grateful for those opportunities to go and find pain relief at 2:30 in the morning. And so I really also believe that passing something like business hours is outside the scope of what we should be doing for our businesses. And I do not want to in any way inhibit the growth of our community and their successful pursuit as businesses. So I would not support this ordinance.
Bill?
Well, I'm a business owner myself, and I don't want government coming in and telling me how I can run my business, who can come to work and what time. I don't think it's good for the community, and I really believe that if all of the businesses knew what this was really about, they'd all be in here wanting us to vote against it. So I'm definitely against.
Bill and I've spoken.
They've spoken.
I'll pass for now.
Well, in addressing Councilor Folsom, this ordinance on page 2, the limitation of the section does not apply to sale of prescription or non-prescription medication. So it would not, would that change your opinion in any way?
No.
I support the ordinance. I support it going to the voters.
So I'm looking back at the testimony we got tonight. We had an Amanda Dalton with the Northwest Grocery Association. I heard her clearly say that they do not support any regulations of this nature, and I heard another piece of testimony where the idea of an island of refuge was brought up. And in addition to that, I don't believe, as a city, that we have any position in regulating business hours. So this particular ordinance, I won't support in any way, shape, or form.
No, I'm going to be last.
So may I ask you some questions?
Absolutely.
Chair?
Yeah, please.
So, did the chief speak?
He did. And he also
When you-
was able to clarify some of his comments via email, which you have in your packet.
Right. So I'm confused about the retail sale of other goods or merchandise comprising of less than 50% of the established overall annual sales.
Is that particularly in regard to?
It's on page 1 at the very bottom. And then down below, you exempted gasoline filling stations, so it doesn't apply.
So to address your point, specifically in regard to this, like,
It's under your first page under B, under definitions. I'm just wondering why that.
this actually, quite candidly, is an arbitrary number. We felt, well, I actually, let me clarify that. For the primaries, any time we looked at language that included the words "for the primary purpose of," 50% would be inclusive of a primary purpose. So if something is not being used for the primary purpose of a majority of the percentage, then that's not its primary use. Does that answer your question?
I think so, yeah.
I think on both points.
Right.
Is that clear?
Right. And then under D, you have limitations, does not apply to restaurants, gasoline filling stations, personal service business. So I have a question. You received a letter from the movie theater?
Yes.
So are you considering movie theaters personal service businesses?
No.
Okay.
And we specifically excluded premieres and theaters from the language.
So no, let me clarify that. We are considering movie theaters personal services businesses,
excuse me.
which are then excluded
From yes.
being regulated.
Thank
So
you,
they would not
Tom.
be regulated.
Okay. And then
But if I might add one thing, the one thing that I believe we also discussed was not just movie theaters, but theater in general. And
for example, we're going to have a community center
correct.
that will potentially
Correct.
have a theater function in
correct.
it.
Yes.
So
that is
right, but its primary service is not a theater.
Right.
Right.
Not
okay.
retail, yes.
Not retail.
Right.
Mhm.
Retail, right. But there will be retail, in the building. And then what about a place like where do you work out? Snap.
SnapFit.
So they're open 24 hours a day.
But they're not. They're locked and they're not retail.
But they're in a retail zone.
Again, but it's the business. It's not the zoning. It's the business type, and that would
How are they? Well, go ahead. Personal service.
that would be a personal service. They're not primarily
They brought
selling
up
retail
specifically, Jim.
goods and
Okay.
merchandise. So
Okay, because I didn't see that mentioned under personal service business.
now it just says nutritional / weight loss centers. So
Right.
was the only
Tanning.
the
I saw
closest,
spas and tanning salons, but not potentially exercise facilities. Okay. And then on page 3, under 5, you have such conditions may include but need not be limited to the creation of a security plan and or the hiring of a private security guard.
Yes, and this was specifically related to extended hours. So if,
i.e. Black Friday?
for example,
Okay. So May.
that would
So-
be up to the city manager to determine whether
Right.
they thought that
And how
that
would-
was would be necessary or not.
So I have trouble with the word may in any ordinance because it's too general and broad. So I was wondering under
Yeah, we talked about this and whether we should use the word will or may there, and,
Right.
and it was the attorney's recommendation that we go with may in
May.
this particular case because there are just too many variables. They thought that and different types of situations that could come up, and they wanted to give the flexibility. So I understand your concern about that. We specifically had a conversation about that word in that sentence, and the recommendation from legal counsel was probably better to use may, just because you just can't figure out at this point in time what situations might come up. Certainly, you can have a different opinion on that, and you can change it to will. There's no prohibition from that, but that was kind of the recommendation we got.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering how many people in this room know what a writ is?
Probably somebody who violated it would find out quickly.
Okay.
Can I answer that?
Sure.
Linda? The reason that you're looking at page 4,
Yeah.
which is the mechanism for challenging a decision.
Right. I just wanted you to
that is
clarify.
Already, it is the standard mechanism to review a government action.
Right.
And it's defined by state law.
It's the opportunity to have another governing body review it, correct?
No, the court.
The court, the court, yeah.
Yes.
Yes, the court system, okay. And then your penalties. I'm interested in $1,000 for each day violation.
And again, the word may was listed here. So a violation in this regard, if a violation were to occur in which public safety was being jeopardized, for example, then the city manager at their discretion could impose this kind of a penalty.
Okay. Okay, so when the committee was talking about regulating hours of operation, you mentioned earlier the representative from the Grocers Association came and is concerned about Amanda Dalton about deliveries. And did you have conversations about a retailer, Home Depot? Obviously, Home Depot is not open 24 hours a day, but
yes, and that is also addressed. Were you done? Yes, and that is also addressed within the ordinance. So the hours of operation would not be inclusive of deliveries to the establishment. The hours of regulation would be related to hours that the facility was open to the public.
So your concern is sales from 1 a.m. to 5 a.m.?
Collectively, the committee, the majority of the committee felt very comfortable with a 1 a.m. closing and 5 a.m. opening. There was a lot of discussion spent on this. As you will see within the packet, we also received a lot of a number of comments from the public, as we have this evening, related to this particular ordinance. As you'll find in review of some of those emails, a large number of the emails favored additional restrictions on hours. But again, the majority of the committee did feel comfortable with a 1 a.m. closing and 5 a.m. opening. And again, the basis upon which we drafted this ordinance, the focus of this ordinance is to promote the health and well-being of the neighboring community and the residents. So having there be an opportunity for neighborhoods and residents to enjoy, frankly, quiet enjoyment, we felt like was something that is a valid concern to the community. Additionally, the chief had an opportunity to clarify some of his statements specifically related to regulating business hours. And so hopefully he'll have an opportunity to answer any questions that you might have related to community policing and those sorts of things, and how this ordinance lends itself to that very notion.
Chief?
Sorry, Chief.
I have not forgot you. Can you just weigh in
Look at
on?
a thank you card for that one.
Can you weigh in on this as a potential tool for our police force in issues in our community where 24-hour businesses are open, I guess.
Again, I'm not intending to play a game of semantics, but weigh
Sure.
in, I guess, is I think it's fair to say, hopefully, Mirta would agree with me that when I spoke to the committee, I didn't come with a presentation. I just answered questions. I took no position on this ordinance. I don't take a position now. I answered the questions they presented. My main point, I guess, on this general, larger topic is having to deal with the growth of the community. And that's really what it comes down to. It doesn't matter where you build it. It doesn't matter what it's called. It's going to need to be protected. Different things happen during the day. Different things happen at night. Open, closed, doesn't matter. It's a resource that has to be protected. So in terms of position, no. If that's what you mean by weigh in, I haven't taken a position on this. Hopefully that answers your question.
Okay. Did anybody from the business community, Target, Home Depot, Albertsons, Safeway, anybody who has a larger facility come and talk to the committee, or?
No, they did not. The only there were two local businesses that did come, and that was a representative from Regal Cinemas and another gentleman from Living Springs.
Oh, the
Yeah,
assisted living facility?
Yeah,
Okay.
from the Springs. And he came actually when the first draft was out, and that's when personal service businesses were included. They were not excluded. And after his comments and some other considerations, it was removed. And
redrafted.
because he was certainly concerned that they would have to close their nursing home down after 1 o'clock.
Which was absolutely not the intention of this
They're not
ordinance.
retail sales, yeah. So I'm really getting tired. I can't tell you how tired I am right now exactly. So my inclination is if we were going to refer any ordinance to the voters, it would probably be this one. I have my reservations about whether or not it's really needed. We haven't had a lot of issues with 24 hours. Businesses being open 24 hours when Safeway used to be open 24 hours or Albertsons was open 24 hours. I don't remember a lot of trouble or issues there. I think that if we sent this out to the voters in the form of a ballot title and an explanatory statement, it would have to really clarify, what zones it applies to. Since you don't have a threshold. I know initially when we talked about this, we were looking at 100,000, and I made the mention that that would exclude Kohl's and they would have an unfair advantage. The other concern I have is that we have a disparate tax base in our community where we, as the residents, bear the majority of the taxes, and we have a large industrial property east of town that is a very unique piece of property called the Tonkin Employment Area. And my concern is that if we were to pass an ordinance like this, that could potentially affect our ability to develop that property if we don't define the ordinance very clearly. If we send it out to the voters and they don't pass it, then that would be, I guess, an indication of people's propensity to regulate business or not regulate business. So,
Mr. Mayor, could I make a comment? Tom, I think, is going to talk to you about the time constraints. My point is rather that we cannot use the ballot title as a mechanism of clarification, and you may not have intended that. You may have meant that the ordinance itself would have to be clarified before we would send it. So the ballot title needs to be an accurate representation of exactly what's in the ordinance.
You're right. Yeah.
And then time constraints, we would need pretty specific direction on changes you'd like to make in order to meet if you want to meet the November election, there's always, you could move it to a later election. But if we want to meet November, we're pretty much on a deadline.
Yeah, we would know tonight what you're looking for. Obviously, you could vote to amend that probably on the 20th if you had specific amendments to the language that you wanted to do, I would assume. Yeah, they'd have to be extremely minor. So we definitely need to know what would tonight. One thing I wanted to make sure was clear, and like you said, it's late. This does not apply to zoning in any way, shape, or form. And if it did, we couldn't put this before the voters because then it would be a part of our land use code. So this is specifically limited to types of businesses, regardless of the zone that they lie in. So I know we have some businesses that are in light industrial areas that are primarily retail, which is sometimes are grandfathered. It would apply to them, and we have not made a difference between different zones. However, we have made a distinction between different types of businesses, so it certainly wouldn't apply to industrial properties, which would be almost exclusively the users in the Tompkins employment area.
Okay, I guess I'm done.
Okay. I move that we draft a ballot title and a explanatory statement in relation to the proposed ordinance as submitted by the Special Committee Regulation of Business Hours to the voters. Need a second?
Second. All in favor?
Are you going to? Okay.
Is there any more discussion on it?
If there's no further discussion and you ask for all in favor, and you don't hear a vote, then you need to ask for those
Right.
opposed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Mayor, if I may get the nay, Councilor Butterfield, Councilor Folsom, Councilor Grant, and Councilor Langer. Thank you.
We are going to recess into executive session now after a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
What are we talking about?
Is evaluation.
Okay, dude, I'm
Mayor?
not doing that now. So
Mayor
we're gonna
Middleton?
have to talk about whether we're continuing. It's like
Yeah, I'm-
10:05.
Okay.
Mayor
Past my
Middleton?
bedtime.
Yeah, I'm not doing
Mayor
it.
Mill,
Information.
Sylvia.
I'm not leaving. Due to the late time now and the request, we're going to cancel the executive session and we're going to adjourn. And then we will be posting another executive session. It will be on the next agenda.